Place Malcolm Rewa before the court.
Malcolm Rewa appeared just as he had every day of his 2-week trial in February, wearing a grey tracksuit with his thinning hair combed back into a ponytail. The 66-year-old stared at his lap throughout the hearing, emotionless, and didn't even flinch when a number of people broke into applause as Justice Venning jailed him for life. Crown Prosecutor Gareth Kay said Susan Burdett's murder involved a high degree of culpability.
This was a grave attack on an unsuspecting victim, alone at home when she was entitled to feel safe. The attack was premeditated. It took Ms. Burdett by surprise. The Crown says that when she resisted the prisoner used her own baseball bat to inflict the fatal injuries upon her.
Justice Venning said Susan Burdett was not the first nor the last of Rewa's victims. He outlined a string of violent home invasions in which he attacked and raped women like this.
Your previous offending for which you were sentenced by Justice Anderson was described by the judge as a chronicle of remorseless, depraved and destructive cruelty towards the numerous victims of that offending.
Rewa was already serving a sentence of preventive detention with a minimum non-parole period of 22 years for this offending. He told the jury in his third trial last month that he and Susan Burdett were in a secret sexual relationship and had consensual sex and shared an ecstasy tablet the night she died. Justice Venning said the jury had rightly rejected Rewa's story.
The jury was satisfied there was no reasonable possibility your evidence was true. I understand why the jury came to that view. The evidence against you was overwhelming.
Rewa's semen had been found inside Ms. Burdett's body in 1992, but it wasn't until 4 years later, when he was arrested over other rapes, that it was identified as his. Justice Venning said by inventing a story to explain this evidence, Rewa had furthered the Burdett family's suffering.
By advancing that story, you inflicted a further injustice and indignity on Ms. Burdett and her memory. The evidence did not support any such relationship with you at all. The evidence was also very clear that Ms. Burdett had an abhorrence for drugs. The family, as victims, have had to live with your refusal to accept responsibility for Ms. Burdett's death and the consequences, and have had that hanging over them for 27 years.
The judge said Rewa had taken advantage of other people, one being Susan Burdett's son, Dallas Mackay. In his third trial, his defence lawyer Paul Chambers pointed the finger at her son, saying the whangare man had motive and opportunity to kill his mother. Mr Mackay did gain a several $million inheritance after Ms Burdett was murdered, but it was an alternative theory the jury didn't buy.
The jury rightly rejected that submission or suggestion. It was without any evidential foundation. The evidence overwhelmingly established Ms Burdett returned home from bowling at about 11:15 to 11:20 on the 23rd of March 1992 and was attacked about 20 minutes later, and by you.
Justice Venning said another individual Rewa had used was Taina Porter, who served more than 20 years in prison for Susan Burdett's murder after falsely confessing his involvement when he was just 17. Speaking outside court after the sentencing, Detective Superintendent Dave Lynch wouldn't speculate on whether Rewa could have been put away in 1998 had Taina Porter not already been behind bars for the murder.
Look, I can't speculate on jury deliberations, so I really can't answer that question.
Tim McKinnell, a police officer turned private investigator, was among those sitting in the public gallery of the court this morning. He was part of a tight-knit team who campaigned to free Taina Porter, work that eventually led the Privy Council to quash Taina Porter's convictions in 2015. Surrounded by the paperwork of his next big case in his Auckland office this morning, Tim McKinnell said today was a good result.
Very pleased for the Burdett family first and foremost. I mean, it's Susan who lost her life in terrible circumstances almost 27 years ago to the week. And so it's taken a long time for them to be here, but I hope that this brings them some relief.
He says while Taina Porter was pleased with the news, Rewa's sentence and $3.5 million compensation could not undo the damage already done.
Yeah, Taina continues to struggle in day-to-day life. We haven't tried to hide that from people. He has difficulty coping with the everyday basics. Part of that is his FASD, but part of it is what he went through for 22 years. $3.5 million sounds like a lot of money. It is. It doesn't repair anything. It simply makes some of the practical side of life a little bit easier for him.
Rewa's lawyer, Paul Chambers, has filed an appeal against his convictions, but told RNZ this afternoon Rewa won't pursue an appeal of his sentence. Ātawiti ko te mātua ko Anneke Smith aho.